Hey everybody, it's Jose, the less charming half of the Half Step Down podcast. You might be wondering, where's my normal intro? Well, I'm going to be completely honest with you. Had the week off for Thanksgiving, took the week off, didn't really think about much stuff. Earlier in the evening, I got all my work done for Monday, which is in about, well, it was 30 minutes ago. And I realized that I never recorded the intro to this episode, so I apologize for that, but I'm going to go home. I'm already at home. I'm going to go to sleep. Yeah, I'm tired. But for those of you who are in high school, college, studying for finals, that's what this episode is all about. Study songs. Songs to study to, songs to work with a group to, songs to pretend you're working even though you're in a group project. You know who you are. That's what this week's episode's all about. So we hope you enjoy it. We thank you for listening, and I apologize for not having the intro up, but next week we'll be good to go. I hope you heard that snap. Half Step Down starts now.
I thought that was a good one. That's where we were going.
Oops, that was my fault. Now I just recorded from that point on. That was cool.
Okay.
I'm
So
sorry.
we're not. So this. What did we talk about last week about Metallica?
Oh yeah, dude, you got to make sure that you're
That's what you fucked it up. Jose.
fucked it up. I was the what was it? Documentarians. I stepped on the
Yeah,
cord
you're-
right in the middle of Fade to Black. Or I don't know.
That was magic, and now we can never get it back.
I sent this great clip of Metallica like in the middle of their therapy kind of phase where James is like talking to the rest of the band. He's like, I show up and I feel like I'm walking into a room where everything's already been pre-decided and I don't get a say. And then Kirk Hammett was like, basically what I've been going through for the past 15 years. And Lars has this look on his face of like this shit-eating grin, like, yeah, we know we don't let you make any decisions.
You know the movie I watched yesterday?
What was
And
that?
I texted you yesterday, but you didn't respond to me. I texted you a quote from Blood In, Blood Out yesterday, and I was hoping you knew what it was, but I don't think you did.
I don't even remember getting that text, man.
Yeah. I sent you a text, and I was like, oh, this movie. I can never get enough of this movie.
I'm gonna look up your text right now because it's good podcasting.
Yeah.
So let me just look.
Yes. But I don't know if you want to say it out loud.
Oh,
Because
I
it's
don't
one of
wanna-
those it's one of those vulgar lines from the movie that only you and I get.
Oh yeah. No,
Yeah.
All
That's
right.
what that one. And the problem is that we can't post that on Twitter because people are gonna get mad.
No, yeah,
It's
that's
just
not
a quote. We're quoting something, right?
a quote from one of the best movies ever made.
Ever made. How often did we see that movie?
I still watch it just when I need something on in the background. Just throw it on.
Yeah, I agree. And you know what else is good background?
What?
The half step down podcast.
Goddamn right.
Yeah, that's right. Welcome everyone to the Half Step Down podcast, where we create playlists for any given situation that people might find themselves in, and hopefully we'll give you some, maybe let you in on some brand new bands, and possibly tickle your earbuds. I am your host, Renee Grano. With me, as always, is my co-host, Jose, the salty almond Martinez. How are you doing today, sir?
I was unaware I was a salty almond, but
Well, weren't you having almonds earlier? That's what we were talking about before
Yeah.
you
I'm
hit
sorry,
record, which was magic.
I messed it up. You said salty almond, and I was like,
Did I say almond? Oh, I meant to say almonds.
Almond.
Almond.
Those are really close.
Yes.
I didn't even realize.
Yes.
To answer
Yeah.
your question,
Why
I'm
don't
doing
you-
all right.
Okay, good. I'm glad you're doing it right. I did catch our show today. Every time a show releases, I like to take a little snippets and listen to bits and pieces to see how bad I sound.
Mhm.
And I realized that we need to get, either you or I, or maybe the both of us, need to get a better internet connection, because there are a lot of times where we tend to like either cut each other off or not say a word and just wait for the lag to happen.
There's regardless, like a slight delay, like whenever you do these conference like kind of internet calls, and it's
Yes.
actually like one of my coworkers, because I'm teaching online now, found an article about how that really messes people up. Like it stresses people out without you even knowing. So I just found that interesting. But yeah, man, like we suffer from that hardcore.
Yeah, we definitely do. But you know what? As the last professional broadcasters in 2020, I think the audience can deal with it just for a little longer.
Dude, that vaccine will be on its way soon, man. I'm sure eventually we'll all be back together.
That's
much easier.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so. Let's cross our fingers. Jose, why don't you tell everybody what we're doing today? I know we're changing things up just a tad bit, and explain what our theme of the show is today.
Oh, so we're gonna change things up a little bit in the shows coming up, just to kind of talk more about the situations and have the playlist be more of the icing on the cake going forward from now on. And I think this particular subject hits close to home to a lot of people, and I think it's kind of the perfect segue. So today we're going to talk about studying, right? It's something we all hate to do, but we have to do it. Studying can take many forms, right? You got the big test, you've got finals, you've got projects. Right now we're in that time of the year where finals are coming up if you're in college or in high school. So we thought it would be interesting to talk about that and then try to provide a playlist for people so that when they are studying, regardless of the situation, whether you're working with a group or you're writing a paper, you've got the right tunes to kind of get you through it, because it can be a slog.
It really can be. And as a student in college right now, it is a little stressful. I always make time for the podcast, obviously.
Of course.
But it is very stressful. And you as a teacher, I can imagine it's just as stressful for you because of seeing your students stress out over something. And how hard, let me ask you a question as a teacher. How difficult is it for you as a teacher when you see your students stress out over a final that you know they can do well on, but you can't, I don't know, you can't ask them to just relax, right? Because they have to study. But does it stress you out as well? Does finals week stress you out now as much as it did when you were a student, I guess?
Well, I think the problem is when I was a student in high school, it didn't stress me out, which is why I dropped out of college 3 times before I finally finished. But honestly, dude, I tell my students to relax all the time. I just straight up tell them, I'm like, look, guys, not that I always say this and we like put it with a caveat. We're like, guys, it doesn't really matter. Like, you're going to do fine. Like, unless you're trying to get into that top school. And then even then, and this will be a discussion I think we'll have later. It's like, even the prestige of some of those top schools, like some of that sheen is like waning away. Just at the nature of how life is, you know what I mean? Like, it's a weird time for kids, but every teacher I know is like, look, guys, it's starting to matter less and less what college you get into. If that's even your path in life, like you could make a hell of a living doing something else, you know? So just relax. It's not the end of the world. But, you know, when you're in high school and you're trying to do well, you tell that it's like, you know, like when they say don't ever tell a woman to relax, they just get mad. You know, you tell a high school senior to relax. Either they're too relaxed or they're just stressed out.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that abodes that for a lot of people, right? Even outside of just high school, like especially me right now. I mean, obviously we both went to community college, and it's just a stressful time. So I think the best thing for us to do is to introduce people to new bands and artists and maybe get them to relax. Right? Just relax. That's the best thing we can do. That's the best thing you can do when you study is just relax. As much as we hate it, right?
Yeah, you know, I mean, like I was looking up some stuff before, and there's just countless articles and studies done about how music can really help you de-stress while you're studying and help you focus and all that stuff. So hopefully we provide some people with some good tunes as we go on, so that people can have that in their back pocket while they're trying to get through this ultra stressful time.
Yes, and there are. I know you wanted to talk about it's proven that music will help you de-stress, right? And and get your studying done and get it done in a more of a timely manner.
Yeah, man. I mean, there's like I said, there's like tons of articles to talk about how like you pick the right kind of music, it'll help you focus, it'll alleviate your stress, it'll let you kind of get down to the work at hand and just kind of go from there.
Yeah. You know, gosh, man, like just thinking about it now, the college life is difficult. But then again, I think one of the most interesting things about college in general, when it outside of just having to study for these things, is I think you and I have definitely experienced college in a totally different way. You want to brush up a little bit on that?
So yeah, so I think the college experience we had is we both went to, well, you're still in college, and you're going, and I went to just straight up commuter school. So for those listeners who don't understand what a commuter school is, a commuter school is like a college where it's not really. When you think of college, you think like a college town, where people are dorming, they're living, are in and around the campus, the wild parties, all that stuff. But a commuter school is usually like, it's not as prestigious. It's usually like one of the state schools, and they've got people who live at home or people that are coming back to school. So for me, it was just kind of like, and I'm sure you have a similar experience, right? I think Tom Hanks even said like community college and commuter schools, it's high school with ashtrays. It's this weird thing where you kind of just make your own schedule. All that glam of the college life where you get up in your dorm or your apartment and you're just surrounded by other, 18 to 22-year-olds. It's just a whole different experience. A couple weeks ago, for Marta's birthday, we went up to Pismo, and on the way back, we stopped at UC Santa Barbara. And if you've ever been on that campus, it's like it's in a small town, and it's nothing but 18-year-olds as far as the eye can see, and they're all just skateboarding and running around. And it's like frat houses everywhere, but that's not like that wasn't Cal State LA, and I doubt it's Northridge.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. When I went to community college, it kind of felt it is a commuter school, and that was because there's a couple of different community colleges in our area that actually do have a community feel to it, where there's people involved. If you go to Mount Sac or if you go to Pasadena City College, I feel like those schools are more intertwined with each other when it comes to the students and the campus themselves. Citrus is very popular to people who just want to get in and get out, and that's what I did. Let alone my academic career is definitely a little. I'd like to think, for me personally, is a little more difficult. As some of the audience might well know, I am disabled. I do have a disability, so it is a little more difficult for me. But yes, I go to Cal State Fullerton, and I feel old as hell when I'm at school. It is ridiculous. I go there, and it's funny because even at the same time, I feel like some of these students, some of my classmates, it's funny to say classmates, right? Because I'm in my 30s and everybody's probably 18 to 22, but they come up to me and they ask me questions like, if we're ever in like group projects and stuff, I feel like I'm always the one taking lead. And I feel even my professors sometimes too. I'll never forget. I had a professor once at my community college. He says, "Hey," this is his first semester teaching at a college. He was a high school teacher, and he says, "Hey, do your professors usually let you out at the time, at the right time?" And I go, "Well," I said, "sometimes they'll let us off early, sometimes they'll let us off late. On time. It depends on what your schedule is, right? On what you're teaching." He goes, "Okay." He goes, "I trust you." He goes, "I trust you more than some of the other students." And I was like, "You're making me feel old, man." Like there's an older connection there between me and some of these professors, but it definitely is a little different. I have no regrets in life, as I'm sure you don't either. Because I feel, regrets are just regrets, right? I think that if I were to have any regrets, it'd be the fact that I didn't get to enjoy the college life as well as I think I might have enjoyed it. But I think everything happens for a reason. So, I still enjoyed life before, even without going to college, but I should have a lot sooner. But, you can't complain about those kind of things because I'm still living, right?
Absolutely, man. And I always think about, I don't know if I would have survived in that kind of environment, being like left to myself. I don't know if I would have gone like party crazy, or I was never that dude, but I certainly would not have gone to class. I mean, I skipped a lot of class in community college when I first went. My first stint.
Yeah, so did I. Yeah, mine too.
But no, man, like those are interesting points. Like, yeah, and there's definitely, I think community colleges have community colleges, JCs have a community around them. It's just not, it's not Animal House, right? It's not when you see all those wild college frat parties, that's just not what it's about. And it's because, yeah, man, you've got classes where, yeah, you've got, in community college especially, you got like 40, 50-year-olds in there who are taking classes to try to get caught up on stuff. In fact, one of the songs I picked, and we'll talk about it later, I had a really cool experience, and it was a guy that got me into jazz, but we'll get into that. It was cool, man. But I definitely, and I'm going to share this story off the top real quick, but there are sometimes advantages to being the older guy in class. I took a class in community college, or not, no, this is at 4-year at Cal State LA. It's like one of the last classes I took. It's called Transportation Geography. I took it because I had to have a geography credit. And I thought this is going to be the most boring class in the world. But me and a couple classmates in there, we nicknamed the professor. I don't know what just happened there. We nicknamed him Professor. Because this class ended up being the most interesting shit I had ever heard in my life. And we were just kind of like, every time he'd be like, he did this thing on the first day of class where he's like, I'm going to take this piece of paper, and he like crumpled it up. And then he tried to lay it flat, and it made this kind of like uneven surface. It's like, what's the best way to get through this region? And we're like, I don't know. He goes, you'd follow the creases. That's how you would plan where a train goes. And everyone's like, huh. Like, I never even thought of that. Like,
yeah.
And this class had like 4 field trips. And this is the point of my story. So one of the field trips, we took the Amtrak out to like Claremont. And the whole point of the field trip was he lectured on the train and explained like why they set up train stations, where they do for shipping and all sorts of stuff. So then we get to Claremont, and he's like, all right, guys, be back in an hour. Because that's just the whole thing. Half of my lecture was the ride here. The other half is the ride back. So me and like all the other dudes that were older, we literally just went to a bar and had a couple beers while all these like 18-year-old kids were like watching us not able to drink because they were all young, and we're just kind of like, whatever, dude. Like, so they just
I guess that's a positive, right? Is being able to do things that you wouldn't be able to do at 19, right?
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. So let's get into why we're here. Half Step Down is a music podcast. Let's talk about the kind of music that people that you and I would listen to while we study. Well, and that I still listen to while I study, or what you listened to when you studied. And I think one of the biggest things that we can talk about right off the top before we get into our picks is lo-fi hip hop. Now, lo-fi hip hop is something that has become very, very popular. If you were to Google or type in on Apple Podcast or Apple, I'm so used to saying podcast because of the show, on Apple Music, Spotify, wherever it is you get your music, you just type in study songs or study playlists or something. 99% of the time you will get nothing but lo-fi hip hop. Do you think that's correct?
Yeah, I think lo-fi has basically taken over the study realm. When we talked about this, there's, depending on what you're doing. So like if you're studying for a test or you're writing a paper or whatever, right? And you want something in the background to get you going. So you type in study into Spotify or even like Pandora or whatever, you're going to get these lo-fi stations. And I have kind of a love-hate relationship with some of this stuff. I really like it. Like, I honestly do. Like, I put it on all the time when I'm working because I don't need to think about it. It's got that right beats per minute to kind of just get my head nodding, but it doesn't distract me from what I'm doing. It's the kind of thing where I could listen to 10 songs and it's kind of like, oh yeah, I thought I was just listening to one song. They basically all sound the same. So my hate relationship with it is that I know it's just some dude with like one of those mini keyboards who's playing like 4 or 5 different chords over like, breakbeat and like a very simple bass line. So it's kind of like this is just manufactured music to get people to work like more efficiently. And you could get that with other music, but I hate making stuff like Miles Davis or like Dave Brubeck. I used to put that on when I studied. But like that's like really good, talented music. And I'm sure there are like really talented lo-fi hip hop guys out there. But honestly, and this might be a bad thing, but it's like, how do you tell the really talented guy from the not when it's basically all sounding the same?
Lo-fi is there's definitely a gray scale in lo-fi hip hop. Mm-hmm. I feel that and by gray scales I mean you have it's in the middle of what can be considered. Sorry, someone's calling me and I'm not going to answer. I apologize, guys, if you guys heard the vibrate. Carlo Flores, if you're listening to this, don't call me when I'm recording an episode.
Come on, Carlo.
So I lost my train of thought. I think that lo-fi hip hop falls in a grayscale, and that grayscale is right in the middle of something that's creative and something that has just been put together uncreatively. And by that I'm saying, like you said, you have your drum pad and you make one specific beat and you let it and you loop it for 3.5 minutes and you find a jazz chord that you can ring on the piano and you just let it go. Now, some of that at the same time, though, it can be very detrimental to how you play something, and it gives you an idea of, it gives you that concept of, okay, I can go somewhere with this, because even just your most simplest beats can have somebody rap over it or sing over it, whatever it is, and it becomes a song.
Yeah.
And that's not to take away from lo-fi, because in the 80s, lo-fi was just a name that was tagged onto specific music that that wasn't popular music at the time. It was just things that sounded too raspy, something that you would get coming out of like a video, like a VHS, right? I personally think that lo-fi is supposed to make you feel nostalgic.
Oh,
in some
100%
way. And it's funny because you don't know how you're feeling in nostalgia when it comes to lo-fi. When I listen to lo-fi, I think to myself, I don't know how this is supposed to make me feel, but it makes me feel nostalgic, but I don't think of anything. But yeah, go ahead.
And I think a lot of that is associated with like you go on YouTube and you type in lo-fi, right? You're gonna get Chilled Cow or like Homework Radio. You're gonna get like an oddly romanticized like anime drawing of like being alone in a bedroom, like watching TV. Like I dare anyone I tell people, like, go right now, look up lo-fi on like YouTube. And you're going to get the studying anime girl. You're going to get like a furry on a rooftop with a cigarette, like a cityscape or something. It's trying to elicit an emotion of like the good old days. There's so many like, and I actually like, I like some of them because it gives me music to like chill to, but it's like, still awake at 3 a.m. playlist, right? Or like, noodles at midnight playlist, and it's like, dude, this all sounds the same. But it's
funny because anime was I feel that lo-fi and anime were intertwined together even in like the early 90s, but anime wasn't big here in the United States, and that's where lo-fi and all that was all big in Japan, and that's where lo-fi comes from. Samurai Champloo is probably how I got introduced to lo-fi. And so that goes, you know what I mean? Like, so it's been going on for a long time, but now I think it's a good thing that it's starting to become, it's revolutionized the industry in what kind of music I'm going to, and it's revolutionized the industry in the way that you're always going to listen to it. And it's not just for study either. It's for everything. You can listen to lo-fi for everything, I think. You can listen to for anything, and I think that's pretty great. Well, so I also agree with you that I do have a love-hate relationship with it as well, but I think that you and I have the same reasons behind why we hate it, and also the same reasons behind why we love it.
And I don't want to again, I don't want to say like I hate it. Like I listen to it a lot. I just often feel like it's just manufactured. And then like looking at and I did a little research. It's kind of like you could even consider like the Wu-Tang Clan. They sang over really lo-fi beats. Like it was just like it just really. low end production value stuff. I wasn't aware that I know that now because of the aesthetic of the of the of all the channels and stuff associated with it, but I wasn't aware that like lo-fi originated in Japan. I don't know if that was like a thing. But I know like I know lo-fi like the first times I heard it were like on the internet. Unless it was associated with like I heard a lot of like lo-fi garage bands. And it was bands that sounded like the White Stripes. It just sounded they had like really low production value. And the only other time I've heard about lo-fi hip-hop, other than the kind of homework radio stuff we're doing now, is like, yeah, beats like over the Wu-Tang Clan or like underground hip-hop. But yeah, man, that lo-fi stuff that's really cool. Like, I had like students that would like freestyle over it. And I always thought like, why don't more people freestyle over this stuff? And maybe it's just like I'm not as entrenched in hip hop culture. I'm sure there's a million MCs that are going crazy over lo-fi beats right now. I don't go. Yeah. I'm not on SoundCloud or Bandcamp or whatever. Yeah, but it is the kind of. But I was gonna say it is the kind of thing like if you're studying for a test and you do not want to be like distracted by words, or if you're like really grinding out a paper, or you've got like a group project, people around you want to put something on that's not gonna like dig into the conversation and get you guys going. Like this is a good way to go.
I agree. I have an interesting experiment, just like we did for Thanksgiving, which, by the way, made me extremely hungry when we were done with that show.
Absolutely.
Why don't we talk about, when we start talking about our music, why don't we go into a little more detail on when and for what type of studying would we be doing this for? Like, would we be studying for a final? Would we be writing a paper? Would we be doing this? Would we be doing that? Let's go in. Let's get into the music. But I definitely think that lo-fi has definitely taken its course, and I think it's awesome. Don't get me wrong, I do enjoy myself some good lo-fi too, and I feel like it's more producer based than artist based.
Yeah, and this is where that line gets blurred, right? Like it's the producer is the artist, right? It's like whoever's making it is just doing it. And I like some of the artists I do follow do have lyricists come in and sing over, like they'll write a song, it'll be like City Girl featuring this or Idealism featuring this guy, you know what I mean? So I guess it's like happening. I'm not entrenched enough in the world to know about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's hop over to our music, huh?
Tell me about your list, man. I'm looking at it right now.
All righty. I should have been a little more prepared for this, guys. I apologize. Well, the first one we're going to talk about is, since we're on the subject of lo-fi, I am going to go into, you know what, Jose? I cannot find my list. Sorry, guys. I apologize. Talk a little more, Jose. Talk about your life.
So, all right. So when we were talking about some of this stuff, so if you're, you got the test, you got for studying, you kind of break it down a couple things. You got the dreaded test, right? So this is where I was talking about your instrumentals, lo-fi, jazz. I love instrumental soundtracks for this kind of stuff. That's kind of the thing. I got to tell you a story about the worst test I ever took in high school, man. This was one of the things that I always remembered this test. It was American history. I had missed the test date, and I always remember my teacher telling me, don't ever miss one of my tests because you do not want to take my makeup exams. And I'm like, all right, whatever. I miss a test. I don't even remember why. Maybe I was legitimately sick. I show up for my makeup exam. And this guy was a great teacher. I love this guy. But he's like, you're going to make up your test? My grade was already pretty low. I'm like, yeah. He goes, all right. Hands me this piece of paper so you can go sit in the back and take it. I sit down. I look at the test. It's just 10 dates. And he says, one paragraph on what happened on that day and why it's important. And for a guy that doesn't study, who one time fell asleep in class and left a giant drool mark on his book, and I just closed it and turned it in, I just kind of looked at him like, all right, homie, I get it. Like, I should have been here that day. I'm really sorry. I just guessed. Yeah. Because it was just literally a date, like June, blah, 19, whatever. What happened? Why is that important?
Yeah.
It's like, and it was 10 of them. And it's just kind of like, all right, dude. Touche.
Yeah.
Touche.
Yeah. He shut it down.
He shut it down.
I haven't had a professor like that. I've been very fortunate, but I hope I do. Actually, I do have one
That
story.
wasn't a professor, man. That was a high school teacher.
Oh God.
He did not mess around.
Yeah. I had this had nothing to do with the test or anything, but are you familiar with ratemyprofessor.com?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, so I had taken this is an English 101 class. I remember we were in class. It was during a winter session, I think, and the professor says, "Did anybody see my Rate My Professor?" And I didn't, and a couple of people raised their hand, and he's like, "Oh, I'm surprised you still took my class." And I was like, "Oh, dude, it's gonna be one of those. What a jerk!" Yeah, so that was a pretty difficult class, but I found my list. I'm sorry, guys. It takes me a little while to find some things. I apologize for the inconvenience, but we are here. Since we're on the topic of lo-fi, I'm going to talk about one of my favorite lo-fi songs is Flowers by In Love with a Ghost. I chose Flowers by In Love with a Ghost for a couple of reasons. One, when you listen to lo-fi, sometimes a lot of this, like we talked about earlier, a lot of these songs can kind of just go on, right? And it's probably been 10 minutes and you've probably listened to like 17 songs. But sometimes when you catch an interesting riff or like a piano jazz chord going on in there or something like that, you tend to look at it. And the first thing that caught my mind was the name of this band, was the name of this producer, and the name of this group was In Love with a Ghost. In Love with a Ghost, to me, if I didn't know any better, if I didn't know what I was listening to, I would think this is some sort of like hardcore emo band, like some screamo band or like post-hardcore band.
Yeah.
And the fact that it was called Flowers, I was like, to me, this is probably the best name and band, like title track and then band I've ever seen, because it just fits the mold in anything. And then you listen to it, you're like, wow, this is nothing like you think about, right?
Right.
So my question to you is, have you ever, how do some of these producers, if anything, think of these names for these songs? Like where, again, lo-fi is it's art, right? It's just creativity without having to necessarily write anything over it. So where does Flowers come from, and where does In Love with a Ghost come from?
You know what, man? I've had this kind of thing. I think sometimes, especially with the lo-fi, you are just picking an object that you think. It almost seems like they're just the titles of songs or descriptions for Instagram photos or whatever. It's just very strange. Mm-hmm. It's like a random object, or it's like an emotion. Like it is just a very strange world out there, and I don't know how they pick these things. I know like one of the artists I like a lot is this guy Idealism, and a lot of his stuff comes from like it seems like Japanese culture. I don't want to say just straight anime, because most of the covers of his albums are like an alley in Tokyo, like in the dark. And it'll be like one of the songs I'll talk about later, just like a Japanese word. But it's just kind of like, I don't know where you get this. And then what about those particular chords made you think of Flowers? Like, you know what I mean?
Yes.
You're just picking a name because you have to have a name.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, I In Love with a Ghost just sounds like a post-hardcore band. You know what I mean? Like that's just things. You know, it sounds like they would be opening for Title Fight at the Glass House in Pomona on November 7th.
Sounds like bangs,
right?
Like kids with bangs,
right? Exactly. So my next song here that I chose was called "Night Falls" by Steel Train. We've spoken before about Steel Train in on back in the day. It feels like forever ago when we were recording the first few episodes of the show, where we would talk about albums, right? And the one that I introduced you to was Trampoline. This is off of their For You, My Dear EP, which is only 6 or 7 songs. It came out in 2002. This is definitely different than the stuff that we've listened to before when it comes to the band called Steel Train. This is when there was just a trio, a bass player, a guitar player, and a singer, Jank Antonoff. Jank Antonoff, the singer from the guitar player from Bleachers, and the guy from Fun and stuff like that. Now, I particularly like this song because I enjoy the soothness and the deep bass undertone of the singer, and how soothing it can be, especially when you're studying. Like if you had headphones on, like if I'm at a Denny's or something and I had my headphones on, just kind of focus, right? This is definitely something that I don't necessarily listen to, but it has like just that lo-fi bass tone to it in his voice, which is pretty great in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And then if you listen, and then Jank Antonoff is just an amazing guitar player. I think that, you know, he has that style. It definitely has that jazz style to Nightfalls, if anything, right? He definitely has that feel of jazz, I guess. And he's just an amazing guitar player. So yeah, that's why I picked that one. What did you think?
You know what? This was definitely so when we did the Steel Tree episode, I talked about how like it really didn't speak to me in much of a way. But this I liked a lot more than the other stuff you showed me. Maybe it's the fact that it was more stripped down and just basically like a trio. I liked it a lot more, and I could see like, yeah, this is something that you could put on if you're like working on a group project, or if you're writing a paper and you just need something like to kind of get you through. I could see that happening for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. That's where I would go. You definitely put something on like that in the background to kind of get the flow going, right? The vibe going, to get your map going, because, you know, group project, you're going to need some sort of visuals and stuff, right? So I think that'll definitely stimulate the visual aspect of your project.
You know, when you're a group project, man, you're either the dude doing all the work or you're the guy that's playing Xbox in the background. You know what I mean? That's all it's about.
It's revelations.
It's revelations. Just
revelations. Stay the Same by, I think it's pronounced Mellow, but I'm not sure because I can't know what that symbol is after, but I'm gonna go with Mellow. So Stay the Same by Mellow is another lo-fi song. I sometimes wonder. It's then again, it's the same thing to me. I picked the song because I honestly, this is just one song that I when I first listened to lo-fi, this is something that I first listened to and I was like, oh, I really like this song. You know, it kind of just stuck to me. And I always think about how it always goes to the same. When I find a song that I like, when I find a song that I see the names, so I'm just rambling on. I see the names too. I notice that where do they get these names? Like, that's where it always goes, right? Yeah. And that's just where it always goes for me. I'm sorry. I just have nothing else to say about these lo-fi tracks, but that's where it goes.
No,
like, where did they get these names?
Of course, man. It's like a lot of that's like teapot or whatever it is you're going to be doing. It's like, yeah, I get it, man. I don't know where you got it, but maybe that's what you were looking at when you had your keyboard out.
It could be. Who knows? That's the way the cookie crumbles. I don't know where I went with that.
Yeah, man, but good on you for going there.
I appreciate you for giving me kudos to that. I like that. That's what I like about you.
I am a positive influence.
Each other. Yeah. Well, I wouldn't go that far, but you know. So the next song I picked was West 12th Street by Steel Train, again off the same EP. The reason I chose this one is just because this entire EP is just something that I listen to when I study. I've been using this EP to study since I first started college, before I dropped out the first time. And this is you can never go wrong with just some straight guitar playing. Yeah. Simple as that. It's just the guitar that gets me going, and it just shows you how much I feel that sometimes, like, guitar solos, obviously they have, when it's a minute and a half, just some dude strumming, you know, picking an acoustic guitar, it's always cool, you know. So I always enjoy. This always gets me going. I think this is definitely one that I would listen to. This is definitely going to get me going to write a paper. Because I feel like when you're writing a paper, when you're writing like an essay or a term paper or something, you got to get those juices flowing. I don't know about you, but my introduction is the hardest thing for me to do, as we spoke about earlier. My introductions are always the hardest thing to do. But once I get in a groove, I'm on, dude. I'm on it. And this is one of those songs that just get me going. Like, okay, let's get this going. Let's get this going. So
I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the kind of singer-songwriter vibe of it. That was really cool about it.
Yeah. And my last song is I Can Make a Mess Gold Rush by I Can Make a Mess. This song is just, it brings out the pop in me, man. this is a very acoustic pop song, and I saw Ace Enders, who does I Can Make a Mess. He's the lead singer for the Early November, but this is a side project. I saw him do a really interesting, what I thought was a very interesting show, where it was kind of like a pay to see. So you could pay $1, you can pay $100, you can pay whatever you want, and it was all on him, right? Like, and that was pretty cool. So I ended up paying like $10-12, whatever it was, and it was all him. So he had this recording device, probably like a Line 6 or something, and he would just record the little riffs that he needed for certain parts of the songs.
Right.
And then he just kept looping them over and over again. And then once he started getting all these little bits and pieces to it, he finally started strumming with it too. It was pretty interesting how he did everything all by himself. So that was kind of cool. And so that definitely has that like lo-fi-esque feel, because it's just like some repetitiveness in the background. This is definitely something that I would do to kind of just study for like a math test, in my opinion.
It's like the shoegazy kind of
looper
effects pedal.
Yes.
We used to, when I worked at Sears, man, there's her name was KT Tunstall. She had like a hit in the mid 2000s, but she had a song that was really popular, was just her and an acoustic guitar and a looper. And then obviously, if you like Reggie Watts, the comedian, he does a lot of like really awesome stuff with like loopers, and like it's just that Line 6 delay modulator in a microphone. Yeah. It's awesome. Yeah.
It was funny because he also played the drums to it too. He had a specific drum beat to it, and it was just the snare, the hi-hat, and the kick drum, and he just kind of, he hit the Line 6, recorded that little piece, and then that was it. And then it just kept looping and looping, and it was able to do an entire song off of that. So that was pretty cool. I never saw that before I went to that show. So that was pretty cool too.
If you're into those dudes who do like this crazy, look up Mark Rebelit. He has this video. He just does like these songs where it's just him, couple keyboards, and this looper. It's like this big like 5-track where it just loops shit, and he just makes some amazing music just by himself. He's like a really dorky looking white dude who's usually just in a robe and underwear, and that's how he performs, because why not? But look up his How to Make Funk in 2 Minutes. It's pretty awesome.
You caught me eating.
Caught a mid oatmeal cookie, my friends. Mid oatmeal cookies. I would like to just congratulate you though. We made it to about 39 minutes. 39 minutes on a Half Step Down podcast before we mentioned the Early November. I think that's a record.
The Wonders haven't popped up yet.
Wonders, well, now they just did. Let's mark it at 41:58.
It's a pop punk lifestyle, Jose.
I know. I'm aware.
So, what are your reactions to the songs that I chose today?
I think you've got something for everyone. So I dug the lo-fi feel of Flowers in the mellow. The Steel Train tracks I liked a lot more than the other Steel Train stuff I had heard. I felt the other stuff, the Trampoline, just seemed like they were doing impressions of other bands, and this just seemed more stripped down and raw to me. So I liked it a lot more. And then man, the I Can Make a Mess. I could see that you put that on in the back of a group project if people are starting to try to. I know I've been in many a situation where the group project and everyone's just kind of winding down. It's like I need something to pick people up, and you can either do that with coffee or Red Bull, which coffee is my go-to. Red Bull I stopped drinking because I could feel my heart moving one time, which I don't think you're supposed to be able to do that. And then, but yeah, man, overall that was a good list. You got all the bases covered. Tests, papers, projects. It's all there.
I have a funny Red Bull story. I never had a Red Bull in my life until this point. I was working I was a courier for a company where I was delivering packages, and I said, I'm going to buy myself a Red Bull. And granted, I knew that a Red Bull was like an energy drink, but I had never had any because I forgot my coffee in the morning. I remember because I've been a coffee addict since I was like 17, 18 years old. And And it's not for the caffeine, it's because it's coffee. Like, I just love something about waking up and smelling a hot cup of coffee. Like that, if you have a really good roast, oh my God, I'm all about it, right?
I love coffee.
I am a, yeah, it's, I have about 4 different roasts from 4 different coffee shops right now that I haven't, that I have. One of them I haven't opened. 2 of them already, I think I'm almost done, and one of them's halfway there. And I like grind my beans every morning, and I use my French press. Oh, I'm all about it, bro. I got to make time in the morning for those cup of coffees, right?
Oh, I use the French press every morning.
Yeah, I use the French press every morning. I try to. I shouldn't say every morning. I try to. Most mornings. Yeah.
I'm just a pot guy.
Yeah, it is a bitch to clean. That's why.
Oh yeah. I'm aware.
So, yeah. So, I went to the gas station to buy myself a water, like my, every morning I get myself like a big old thing of water and coffee or whatever, but I forgot my coffee. So I got a Red Bull when I was on my route, and they sell those little, what are they, like 8-ounce Red Bulls? I guess that's the norm, right? Like
they're little.
10-ounce. Yeah. So I was like, that's not enough. So I ended up buying a 16-ounce Red Bull. And within 30 minutes, I was like this, just shaking. I felt my heart was about to come out of my chest. I felt like I was having an anxiety attack because of all the sugar I just put into my body.
I used to drink a lot of Red Bull. There was like a short period of time where I would just drink it all the time. And I remember one time I had like 2, because I'm like, oh, I just need another one. And I could literally, like, I wasn't joking. I could feel my heart moving in my chest. And I just remember thinking, that's not a good sign. I need to stop. And I still had half a case of Red Bull left. I will go. I know people. I'll say that again, man. You cut out for a second.
You used to buy them by the case.
I used to go to Costco and buy a case of Red Bull. Yeah. But I'm one of the few people. I love the way Red Bull tastes. I love that taste. That it just tastes like chemicals. I don't know why, but I love it. But
you love it, huh?
I love that chemical taste, man. But
just have after you clean your headlights with a can of Coca-Cola, you're gonna want to have a Coca-Cola.
Right? No, I know. I'm all about the chemical. But anyway, yeah, man. I ended up giving away the rest of the thing. It was bad. It's bad for you, man. Just sleep.
Yeah, the only energy drink that I enjoyed was Amp by Mountain Dew, and that's because it tasted like Mountain Dew.
Oh, you're a Mountain Dew man, huh? Interesting.
Yeah. Oh, I love Mountain Dew. Me and what is the name of Kenneth from 30 Rock? His real name, the actor's name. Oh my gosh! For the life of me,
I'm gonna look that up. Check it out.
Guys, who played Kenneth in 30 Rock? I'm sorry, a free podcast, everyone.
Kenneth from 30 Rock was played by... what's his name? Jack McBrayer.
Jack McBrayer, dang it. Yeah, Jack McBrayer, thank you. So Jack McBrayer is close friends with Conan, and he goes on the Conan show, and Conan had asked him, like, why don't you tell everybody what you love to drink? He goes, I love Mountain Dew. He goes, I can have Mountain Dew all the time. But he had to switch to Diet Mountain Dew because he was drinking so much of it.
Nice.
Now, I wouldn't go that far, but I do remember having Mountain Dew LimeWire. Do you remember that? Or LimeWire?
I've had like 2 Mountain Dews in my life, and I don't know. I don't like the way they taste.
Oh, how dare you. Dr. Pepper and Cactus Cooler and Mountain Dew are my go-tos.
I do like me a Dr. Pepper and Cactus Cooler.
Yeah, it's always good stuff.
All right, man. Let's okay. I'm going to go through my list real quick. So my first pick was Chameleon by Herbie Hancock. So think of a long jazz piece with a healthy chunk of funk thrown right in there. The story behind this, I took a class at PCC. It was called Music and Multimedia, where it was like basics of music production and how to add music to like commercials, how you record audio, stuff like that. And in this class, the teacher was like an old school jazz guy. And he was going through roll on the first day, and he gets this guy, Benny Maupin. And he looks up and he goes, "Are you the Benny Maupin?" And he goes, "Yeah, yeah." And he's like, "Oh my God." He goes, that dude played on the album Chameleon by Herbie Hancock. He'd played with like
Oh,
Miles
wow.
Davis. He'd played with a bunch of like the jazz greats. He's a jazz instrumentalist. And everyone kind of like turned around because it was either like really older people or like people my age. And I didn't know jazz at the time. Like I was not familiar at all. And everyone kind of looked and like he's like, "What are you doing here? Like, why are you in this class? Like, this is like basics." And he's like, "Look, man, like, this was like at the beginning of the kind of home studio revolution, like in the early 2000, 2003, 2004, when you could start recording on your own and have it sound okay." And he's just like, "I want to know what to do because I want to be able to record my own stuff and not have to book studio time all the time." Granted, like, and that was cool. And he told all these stories about jazz and like Miles Davis. He's the reason I bought this album because I saw it at a Penny Lane later. And it's the reason I bought Kind of Blue, the Miles Davis album. And it's like, that's like a classic album, like regardless. But I just thought that that was cool. Like, you'll never know who you run into, especially at a community college. But this is great to have on in the background if you're studying, if you're writing a paper, if you got to like read something for a test or whatever, or you're just straight vibing, you can put this on in the background. I think that like synth bass line, he said has been sampled a lot in a lot of different things. So, and I believe it. Like, it's a pretty catchy bass line. What'd you think, man?
At first I thought Herbie Hancock was John Hancock's brother, according to Tommy Boy.
Wow. You had been sitting on that one. I'm glad we could get it.
Thank you. I'm glad. But I like it, dude. You know what? I wouldn't consider myself a jazz enthusiast, but I have also taken history of jazz and history. We've talked about this on the show, but I'm definitely I enjoy it. It's just a very complicated style of music. As a musician, I think it's just very complicated, but I enjoyed it, man. It was a lot of fun, and especially because of that story. That's so cool. You know,
it was rad.
Well, yeah, that's super rad. Like you had a legend there, right?
Yeah, I mean, ironically, the class was not. I got to learn some basics, but the dude was clearly like an old school dude and didn't really know the modern. Even at that point, was like unaware of some of the potential. But it was a really cool. Like, it was a great learning experience. And
modern technique, right?
Yeah, and I do like a song that's a good 15 minutes.
Absolutely.
To comment on your, I think part of the reason is when you grow up in the rock and roll kind of world, because I talked to one of my buddies that I jam with. He's learning jazz like right now. He's playing stand-up bass. He's learning how to do like he's getting deep into that world. And I was like, dude, one of the hardest things for me as a drummer is when you're playing rock, your whole thing is to lock in. Like, to just make sure you always come back, that you can sway a little bit, but not really. Like, you're supposed to be the rock. And with jazz, It feels like you need to be able to just switch up. Because if the sax player is going to go a little bit faster, you need to like vibe with him. And it's so anti what I've trained my body to do. And he was telling me, he goes, that's why I like playing jazz drums. Because, he plays bass, but like we all dabble in multiple instruments. It's just something you do when you pick up one. He's like, but I like the fact that I'm not locked in. I can kind of go faster and like slow down. And I'm like, yeah, it just seems anti what I was taught to do, but that's what makes it so interesting to listen to. Is like, God, it can go in any direction. It can sound any way, but they somehow managed to bring it back to whatever core key or note they're experimenting with.
Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely right. I agree with you 100%.
All right, man. My next one, Waiting for the Great Leap Forward by Billy Bragg. So Billy Bragg is this English singer-songwriter. He's this intelligent, insightful dude. He does this really great thing about mixing kind of a pop sensibility with like serious subjects. And this is one of my all-time favorites. It's basically a guitar piece. It's got a lot of other instruments in it. It kind of builds up, especially at the end there. But it's basically a song about disillusionment and buying into a political idea but realizing that like you're just a young kind of it's all about mixing pop and politics and like what's the point of doing that. And then it's just he's known for just having clever lyrics, and this is just one of those songs that I'll put on when I need to feel smarter. Like like I just need someone to remind me like, oh, okay, like you can be clever, you can have a pop sensibility and still talk about a lot of like really deep subjects. For me, I mean, there's a great line in the song, "The revolution is just a t-shirt away." That's all it is, man. It's a great song, and if you ever get a chance to listen to his other stuff, it's really good. I first came upon this guy on the Henry Rollins show when he was playing this song. And he always changes the lyrics a little bit to kind of make it more topical.
Yeah, I like it. I liked it a lot. That kind of reminds me of Jerry Fish. I don't know if you're familiar with Jerry Fish. He's an English I guess an English pop singer, I guess, kind of. He has it's not the same context in any way, shape, or form, but there's a cover that Jerry Fish does by David Johnston called "Story of an Artist." I don't know if you're familiar with that "Story of an Artist" song.
Oh.
And he does a very, very cool rendition of it. And by no means does it sound like any of the music that you recommend that you talk about on the for your side of the playlist. But for some reason, this particular artist reminded me of Jerry Fish.
Okay.
But I definitely, if you guys ever have you guys want to go listen to Jerry Fish, I think he does some really cool stuff. He's pretty great. But if you guys have a chance, go listen to "Story of an Artist" by Daniel Johnston, and then go listen to the Jerry Fish version. Totally different style, but it's a really good song. Yeah.
Sweet. My next one, "Walk on the Wild Side" by Lou Reed. So Lou Reed is kind of one of those artists that like you can't really say enough about. Like he was kind of at the forefront of the punk movement. Kind of embraced the aesthetic, but went in like a lot of different directions. There's a punk attitude to his music, but it's not what punk rock you and I would like associate with it. But it's another one where I'd put on like, you definitely get cool points, or you used to if you would bust out the Lou Reed, when you're like in a group study session. This one, of course, is his famous tale of a transvestite prostitute in New York. If you're a fan of Tribe Called Quest, you recognize the bass line immediately because this is where they sampled it from. But it's one of those songs that like I put on if I need to feel like clever and smarter and just something to just kind of like, okay, I can do this. This is what I would put on for sure.
All I have on my notes is Bonita Applebum.
Exactly. That's all. Yeah. If I put this on and you're a Tribe fan, I have many a time disappointed my buddy Shankar putting this on because he thinks, oh, we're going to put on Tribe and then Lou Reed will start talking about a transvestite prostitute. And he's like, dude.
Shankar and I have had many conversations about a Tribe Called Quest.
Yeah. But
big Tribe fan.
Yeah. But I highly recommend it. Anything you can do by Lou Reed, with the exception of the collab album he did with Metallica, which I would not recommend. But yeah, he's just he was an American treasure, man. He just passed away. Perfect Day.
What is?
If you get a chance to listen to that, I always love that. I forgot who used it. Somebody wanted to use that song, or they tweeted that song out, and they were like, "Oh, this song perfectly encapsulates that day." And someone reminded them that that's a song about overdosing on heroin. So go ahead and do that.
Yeah. Smart man. Whoever told him to do that. Speaking of Metallica, what did you think of S&M 2?
I haven't listened to it yet.
Okay.
I have not listened to it. I'm going to get to it eventually, but I was a big fan of the first one.
It's good. I haven't heard it yet. I remember listening to the first one, but I haven't. I want to know what your thoughts were on it. So we're gonna have to make a note of that so we can get back to it.
We have to for sure.
Yeah.
All right. My next one was Nagashi Nagashi, I think so, by Idealism. So this is one of the lo-fi artists that I actually do follow. This is one of those, you talked about how certain like lo-fi just makes you feel nostalgic. This one just makes me feel melancholy. It's got a kind of like downbeat to it. It's got this great kind of ambient noise built into it. A lot of his tracks do. They'll have like the sound of like rain in the background or like a far off train because I don't know, why not? You're just making lo-fi beats for people to study or just chill out to. But I really like this guy's stuff. It's all kind of the similar aesthetic. If you're studying or you're trying to plug away at a paper, or like shit, man. Like I was thinking about this. Like even if you're like in the working world, like I got papers to grade. If you got to do spreadsheets, you need some to just kind of get you through, like working in an office. This might be a good way for you to go. It's not too distracting, but also just really pretty melodies.
Idealism is one of those artists that producers that I follow as well, in the lo-fi scene. And this particular song reminds me a lot of Flowers.
Yeah, well, yeah. I think you could say that a lot about a lot of different ones.
No, I know, but this one in particular, it just reminds me of when I first, I was like, am I listening to Flowers again? And I was like, no, it's Idealism. Yeah. So, but then again, going back to the grayscale, right, of lo-fi hip hop, But do you think Atmosphere is considered lo-fi, even though it's not? Even though he doesn't, obviously his music is very well produced, but it definitely has that lo-fi feel to it.
I don't think I'm familiar with Atmosphere, man.
Oh no! Oh, okay. No. Yeah, if you ever have a chance, go listen to Atmosphere. Sunshine is probably his most popular song, but I do feel like Atmosphere definitely has a definitive sound to him. It's definitely produced very, very well. But for some, when I think of lo-fi, I think of Atmosphere. Probably the lo-fi fans in at the Half Step Down, audience is probably going to give me shit for that. But I still do think that he has some sort of reminiscence there. So if you guys ever have an opportunity, go listen to Atmosphere.
I was just reminded of this since we're talking about genres that kind of all sound the same. This is one of my favorite experiences in life. I used to work with this dude at Sears who was into hardstyle, okay, which is a type of EDM music, right?
Okay.
So he puts on this CD on the stereo at work, and what sounds like techno to me is playing. So it's just going, and I'm like, oh, is this techno? And he looks at me and goes, no, it's hard style. And I'm like, well, how can you tell it's hard style? And then almost as if on cue, the track he was playing did this. This is hard style. And I'm like, oh, that's how you can tell, because the music tells you what it is. And it was just like, all right, like to this day, I'm like, I don't know what makes hardstyle different from drum and bass, different from whatever, but you guys go. You do it. Enjoy yourselves.
Have you ever seen that skit on the SNL digital short where Kenan Thompson is a DJ, and he has like this big red button that says like drop or bass or something like that?
That was
and how an EDM goes. Oh no, it wasn't Kenan
the Lonely
Thompson.
Island guy.
Yeah, Adam Sandberg.
Adam
right?
Sandberg, yes.
And it goes, and it's getting to the top, and it's still going.
Yeah.
And he's about to hit the button. He's like, no.
Yeah.
He's saying, and he's like swiping everybody's credit card. He's like, this is the best night of my life. Yeah, I remember that. I remember watching that. I was like, that sounds like.
Oh my god.
I'm not big into EDM, but in all honesty, I think a lot of that stuff, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference either.
If I can find it, I will put it in the show notes. But I, at one point on my internet travels, came across a SoundCloud. All this guy did is the SoundCloud was called something like "I Ruined the Drop," and it was like it would be an EDM song, and then the second it got to when the drop hit, when that big bass hit, it would switch to like one of them switched to like oh my god, what's the name of the band? The band that your girlfriend likes, but you're like the band that we're always
Nickelback.
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 It would and then it would go, look at this photograph. And he did it for like a bunch of different, it would be like a different drop, and then it would go into Santana's Cool. Like it was hilarious. So if I can find that SoundCloud, I will put it up there somewhere. Oh, I caught a mid yawn.
What are you talking about? I don't yawn.
I do all the time. I'm always so tired.
I would never yawn during a podcast. What are you talking about?
It's late,
guys.
It's late, folks.
I'm sorry, guys. It's I've been stressed out.
You're in the middle of finals week. You're in the middle of finals.
Yeah. Well, I'm getting ready for finals week. Yeah, I'm 2 weeks away.
All right, man. Let me get to my last one.
I'm on there.
My last one was Terra's Theme, the piano version by Nobuo Uematsu. I've talked about Nobuo Uematsu before. He's the composer for the Final Fantasy series. He's one of the great underrated composers, in my opinion. If you get a chance, I've talked about how a lot of his soundtracks were like fully orchestrated. A lot of video game soundtracks in Japan from like the 16-bit era, if they were big enough, would get full orchestrated versions of it. But he also released a whole series of albums that was just solo piano. So it was all these Final Fantasy, all the music from them, but just him on a piano. And if you get a chance, look those up because they're amazing. You can put on any of them, just hit play and just plug away at studying. Unless you're me, and then in which case you start reminiscing about playing Final Fantasy. But yeah, man, they're beautiful arrangements, and I love them.
This is Final Fantasy 6, right?
Final Fantasy 6, 3 here in the United States. 6, arguably the best one in the series. Definitely a high point for Super Nintendo, though.
Yeah. So, anytime you can cover Final Fantasy, let alone do a beautiful rendition with just a piano, I'm all aboard. I'm all in. Like, I thought it was beautifully done. Very big fan.
All right, man. Let's get under our recommendations, man. What do you recommend this year or this week? This year?
This year. Well, the year's almost. It feels like an eternity, though, right?
Ah, man, it's been a long time.
It's been a very long time. You know what, guys? I'm going to recommend the rest of the For You, My Dear EP by Steel Train. I think it's 6 songs. It's the very first one. It released in 2002. I picked 2 songs from that playlist, from that EP onto my playlist today. But if you guys want something smooth, it's also there's also songs there with the full band and stuff, but it's not overbearing, it's not hard rock, it's not, you know what I mean, it's just very smoothing, very soothe. Really recommend it. For You, My Dear EP by Steel Train.
Yeah, for me, I'm just gonna go ahead and say, if you can find any of those piano collections by Nobuo Uematsu, just go ahead and give them a listen. They're beautiful arrangements, and I highly recommend them.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's head over to our last segment of the night, which is called The Wind Down, where we talk about anything other than what we talked about already. Jose, are you familiar with a little movie, just a very little movie by this small director named John Hughes?
Am I familiar with the movie John Hughes?
No, well, I said that wrong. I said that totally wrong. Are you familiar with this little movie called Home Alone by this small-time director named John Hughes?
I am massively familiar with Home Alone, man. It's a holiday classic.
Did you know that Home Alone turned 30 years old this year?
I'm sure it did, man. I wasn't aware of that, but it is.
Yes.
I can imagine, yeah.
So it turned 30 years old this year, and I figure we talk about if you're a 90s kid, like if you're 90s kids like we are, your 90s life is entwined with Home Alone. And I think it's only right that we talk about our experiences with Home Alone growing up, since it did turn 30.
It turned 30, and we're coming up on the Christmas season, right?
That's right. The Christmas season is among us.
I cannot tell you how many times I've watched this movie. I cannot tell you how many times I've set booby traps around the house to try to catch burglars that were never going to show up. It was on, dude. I'd watched this just in the middle of the year. Like it didn't matter if it was not Christmas time. And one of the great things that I got to do last year, but we actually had to put a stop to it, was we showed my son Lincoln Home Alone. He loves it, but unfortunately, like he's in that parrot mode. So we had to kind of put a kibosh on it because he would run around just calling everyone a creep because he really likes Joe Pesci's role. So like, what are you doing, you creep? And I'd be like, oh man, like it was adorable, but like right now, that and just setting stuff on the ground, waiting for us to trip. So it's kind of like, all right, man, we gotta put the kibosh on this for a little while.
I can't believe that. That's so funny.
It was hilarious.
and it's funny because that's how I remember Joe Pesci before I got older. When I finally realized that he was not known for Home Alone, but he was known for Goodfellas and Casino and My Cousin Vin. You know what I mean? Like,
you know what?
The Joe Pesci that I didn't realize until I got older. I was like, oh, that's who Joe Pesci is. But to me, Joe Pesci is always going to be. It's always going to be the burglar from Home Alone.
Honestly, it wasn't until, and this is just me kind of like not really thinking about it, and maybe it's because honestly, once I got into like my 20s, I hadn't seen Home Alone in a long time. I remember in the 90s I used to watch it all the time, but for whatever reason, once I got like older, I hadn't watched it. I think until like maybe 5-6 years ago it came up, and it was 5-6 years ago that I realized that Joe Pesci is in Home Alone. It was just kind of like, oh shit, I never realized, because like I knew Joe Pesci because, you know, once I got into my 20s, I saw Goodfellas and My Cousin Vinny and like Casino and all that stuff. So I'm like, oh, and then it all of a sudden we were watching Home Alone. I'm like, holy shit, that's Joe Pesci. Like that's like, you know, that's like I amuse you. That's him. People were like, yeah, dude, like it was a big deal. I'm like, I never put it together. I just never did.
If you ask anybody, any of my immediate family, my sisters and my brother or my mom, they would tell you that Home Alone was constantly playing at my house.
Oh yeah, I believe
when I was a kid, to the point where I used to make them call me Kevin.
Nice.
I used to do the scenes where he would put, you know, where he used to put aftershave in his hands and put it on his face and scream bloody murder. I never did the aftershave because at the time when I was a kid, I didn't know what it was. But I used to like wash my face and then do it all the time. And my mom would be like, this guy's ridiculous. So I've never stopped not watching that movie. Every Christmas, it's Home Alone and A Christmas Story.
Oh, yeah.
And the I Love Lucy Christmas special, which has become a tradition for me and has become a tradition for me to miss it. Every year I miss the I Love Lucy Christmas special on CBS. Every year I miss it. And it's my tradition to find out that it was already on air and that I missed it. Nice. Every year. Except for last year. Last year was the very first time where I actually looked it up early enough to say, hey, I'm actually going to be able to catch it. And I put it on my alarm and everything. So, because I'm a big I Love Lucy fan. And yeah, so those are the 3 things in my life that are guaranteed. Oh, and my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle ornaments that I put in my tree every year.
Nice.
Yeah, I have 2 of them that still go on my tree. But for some reason, they're always hidden in the back because my mom puts up the tree and she doesn't want people to see my.
Oh no!
It messes up the flow of the tree.
Look, man, I'm telling you, like I'm not allowed to put any ornaments on the tree. Like Marta's very specific, but it's slowly unraveling because now the kids want to put ornaments up because they're kids. But and I have to be like, dude, Christmas is for the kids. You got to let them do it. So if they want that ugly thing they made, you got to put it up there.
That's right.
She does put it in the back.
So why don't you go ahead and tell everybody where they can find us, where they can find us, Jose.
All right, guys. So I think it was a good episode, right? Here we go.
I think so.
As always, guys, you can find everything you need to know about us at halfstepdownpod.com. That's our website. You're going to find links to all the socials. All the episodes are on there. It's basically your one-stop shop. If you want to see what we're doing from day to day, you can follow us at halfstepdownpod on Instagram and Twitter. You can also follow us on Facebook. That's facebook.com/halfstepdownpod. We have a YouTube channel. Just search us up in the YouTube search bar, and you'll get all our episodes on YouTube. Check out the Spotify playlists. The links are in the description. And of course, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcast, Spotify. Don't forget to spread the word, hashtag HalfStepDownPod. And every Thursday night at 7, please go to titanradio.org where you can listen to Half Step Down Radio, Renee's radio show where he plays nothing but pop punk. Just kidding. He gives you a healthy dose of pop
a lot
punk.
of Wonder Years and a lot of early November.
And just some cool bands and plugs the show. We really appreciate it.
Yes, please go plug the show. Please tell everybody you know about Half Step Down. You can't get wrong with Half Step Down. And Christmas is coming, so we got some good stuff coming on the horizon, right?
Oh, yeah. It's coming up.
Yeah, it's coming up. Well, Jose, you have yourself a wonderful evening. I will have myself a wonderful evening. I already ate all my cookies throughout the show. So
delicious. Let's end
have
it
a
with
good night, everyone.
Delicious.
Take care, everybody.
See ya.
Yeah, give it up for these guys. I promise you guys.
Just so we're all clear, that was not like a real song. Okay. I made that up.